Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of Caffeine and Conversation. We know we're a day late, but that doesn't stop us from getting on and talking to everyone. Hey,
What you say?
Fee.
Hey, Kate, how are you?
Good.
And hello, Cape-Nators.
And I live here in Houston, so we've been having terrible weather for the last couple of weeks. So,
Hmm.
and when I moved over here 13 years ago, it wasn't so bad, but I think because the area is now developed, I mean, I could get two drops of rain and my power is gonna go out and my internet is gonna go out. And I live in the city limits. It's not even like I live out in the country.
Wow. Well, I'm sure that's not a good feeling, especially with you being in school and
I know. And
being
I've
internet access. If you weren't in school, it
yeah,
probably wouldn't be no big deal, but yeah.
it still would because you're so connected. Everything is so connected to the internet now. And it's one of the ways that we even watch TV. So, for me years ago,
TV ain't
I
a
cut off my
necessity.
I cut off my cable years ago, so everything now is just through the internet for me.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're right. Yeah. I need to do that. Because these
Otherwise,
cable
it's
prices
so
ain't no joke.
expensive. Yeah.
These
So
cable
of course
prices.
we're gonna discuss again another episode of, at least that's what we do. We discuss love, marriage, and Huntsville, and then we
Mhm.
try and relate back to just life.
Everyday
You know?
life. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
this week we're talking about Love, Marriage, and Huntsville, season 6, episode 6, being lady like. So, what were your thoughts?
A lot of thoughts on this week episode. I do think they presented lessons that we can learn from and that we can apply to our life. And one of those lessons that that I learned from it was the conversation with Keke and that she had at the tea. You know, Mel decided to have a tea about etiquette and communication. And I thought that was important because I find it, Kay, not just on Love, Marriage, and Huntsville, that sometimes as women, we don't know how to effectively communicate with each other. And I
Hmm.
think Stormi said it best on last week episode when she said that sometimes we just try to push stuff under the rug and go along to get along when we really should be discussing it. Now I do agree with Mel that wasn't the right place to have that conversation, but I do think conversation should be had. And I think with that group of women, as well as, like I said, this happened in everyday life, we don't know how to effectively communicate with each other. And I find
I
that
agree.
in my own personal life with people that I know. And I'm like, come on now, we're adults. Can we talk without having a screaming match, without cursing? Um, you know, I just thought it was much needed. I don't know how much it did for the group, but I
Hmm.
think that lady presented a few points because they just showed us a snippet of the tea, and so she only brought out a few points. One of the points she brought out when Stormi said, "Hey, I like to curse," she said, "Normally you don't have a good vocabulary," and Stormi like, "No, that's just who I am." So that was one of the things. But when Keke, and that's why I mentioned her first, when she took that dig at Tiffany, and the lady told her, she said, just breathe. And I feel like sometimes, and I say this all the time, I'm known for saying hurt people, and we have a tendency to bleed on people who didn't even cut us. You can very much see that Keke is still in a hurting place and that she still have a lot of issues that she haven't resolved with that core group of women. And the dig that she took on Tiffany's dad, and I know who my dad is. I thought that was
Yeah.
so hurtful. Okay, what did you think about that?
And I thought it was so good that they brought that to her attention within the moment, and then for her to backtrack the way she did. She knew
You
exactly
knew
what she was doing when she
exactly.
said that, and her intent was to dig and hurt Tiffany.
Yes.
But I think Kiki could do with some therapy, to be honest. I
Absolutely.
mean,
All of them can.
or someone to talk to. She tries way too hard, and she's not very good at expressing herself.
Yeah.
But I can say it's probably something that's in their family, and they just haven't elevated and grown enough yet. Because Tisha does that too. She
And
she loves
Wanda.
to
Yeah.
dig. So it may be a family thing, then they think that's okay
Generational.
and treat people that way. But
Yeah.
something that you did point out was about effective communication and why we feel it necessary to yell and scream and not express. Because Kevin and I have been in Discord since Saturday, and I recognize it, but and it's hurt my feeling, but I haven't seemed to be able to um the right time to express, because he's just been so angry. And for him, he's saying that I am saying things that when he says that's it, that should be it. I don't want to be in a relationship like that. That when you draw the line, then I need to just shut up and I can't ask questions. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? So I get that. It's, and I mean, we're gonna get to the other side of it, but yeah, you have to have that forum where you encourage people to can say what's on their mind, and it's not that they're,
Respectfully.
well, of course, respectfully. It's always going to be respectful, but it doesn't have to be a screaming match. And it's okay to have different opinion and different approach. But I find when people feel like they're losing the argument, then they get upset, to then shut it down. But again, I'm too old to argue it, folks. So I don't know.
Another thing, and that's an important point that you're bringing out. When people feel like they're losing the argument, if you're communicating with the spouse, or in your case with you and Kevin, a boyfriend, or in case of Love and Marriage Huntsville, a group of friends, or even if they don't consider themselves friends, they all work together on the show. It shouldn't even be about who's losing the argument or who's right or wrong. It's about just um, um, respecting the other person's opinion and what they got to say.
Yeah.
Even if you don't disagree, I still want to hear you, and that helps you to better understand the person, even though you may not agree with the person. I know Philip and I, we've had that conversation many of times, like, hey, I'm not looking to win an argument. I'm not looking for you to agree with me. I just need for you to hear me, and I would like to hear you. And in the process of doing that, I get to understand you as my spouse. You get to understand me as your wife. And that's the same thing with the group of women. If they can communicate, I think they'll get to know each other on a whole other level than what they do now.
Yeah.
But I just feel like that they can't talk, and I feel like Keke is in a hurt place. And speaking of that, as you said, we seen it with Tisha, and we seen it with Wanda, and that's something I think that our audience, the Capenators, can resonate with, and that's generational curses. Sometimes you have to stop and say, "Hey, my mama did this, my aunt did this, my cousin doing this, I'm doing this. This could perhaps be a generational curse, and what can I do to stop that generational curse and say, hey, it stops with me so it won't go on to my daughter, my granddaughter, my sons, and my grandsons?" Because you can obviously see, you know,
But and this is just from me doing my own work on myself, because when we're in relationships, and I pointed this out to my niece earlier, you're in a relationship and it's not about the other person. You've been in a relationship, whether that's friendship, um intimate relationship, family relationship, working relationship. It's not so much about the other person, it's about you. And you have, and I had this conversation with my mom yesterday on Mother's Day, is that you have to, at some point, if you want to grow and learn, at some point you have to stop and reflect. It can't, every relationship that you go in, that there's some discord and it ends however it ends, or you end up not speaking to people, everybody else can't be wrong. So
absolutely.
so because my mom's last relationship, she was in her 60s, he was in his 70s, and even that fell apart. And we were having an honest conversation yesterday, and I said to her, I found that really, uh I found it really difficult to know that you both got to that great big old age and still the two of you couldn't make a go of it. Of course,
Yeah,
my mom said it wasn't her, it was him. I'm like, yeah, but what was your part?
yeah.
Because what is it that in 60, 70 years y'all haven't realized that you get to that age and still, you know what I mean? And
Yeah,
I
60,
just
yeah.
found it, I just found it, and again, unless you're ready to have that conversation with yourself and hold your own self accountable, because you want to be accountable for your own happiness. And that's the thing I think people fail to realize. They put their happiness in someone else's hand, and it'll never be fruitful or meaningful if that's what you're going to do. You have to be a whole happy person before you embark on being in a relationship and thinking that somebody else is going to be happy, because I'm telling you, they come with their own set of baggages. So
Yeah, and it's the thing about
oh,
generation curses. It is about self-reflection. And when you can reflect and see, not only have other people who have gone before me doing this, but I'm doing this. And when you self-reflect and see, hey, this is a generational thing, I think absolutely, not only does it should cause you to self-reflect, but to do something about it. It's not enough
yeah,
just to reflect,
yeah,
Cape. Once you get through reflecting and you assess there's a problem, then there's some interventions that need to happen, some implementation that needs to go along with that self-reflection in order to see that change. But you can most definitely see that Keke is still in a hurt place. I am happy to see that Mel and Tisha are getting along, and just
yeah.
trying to move forward in a positive way. And even Stormi, mom, you know, I had this issue with Wanda, and I have it with issue with Stormi's mom. You have grown daughters; they don't need you to defend them. And she said, "Well, hey, Mel could have just said not the person that was at my house. She could have actually said Stormi's name." But Stormi was just the same one in the spa that was saying, hey, we need to have real conversations and not just act like. So why couldn't you have that real conversation with Mel? Why did it take your mom coming to a tea with you to try to have a real conversation with Mel and her actions? Why didn't you have that real conversation?
Right.
I just have an issue with the moms trying to jump into the daughters' friendships, relationships, whatever you call it, and instead of storming, because she claimed, okay, that's just who I am. I'm vocal. I'm gonna speak my mind. But why couldn't you do that
Yes.
with Mel and say, hey, you know
But,
what? When
but
you
if I
didn't do that, that
remember,
hurt me.
if I remember correctly, didn't she tell her mom not to, and she went ahead and did anyway? I can't remember, but I think that she was out of line. Her mom was
She
definitely out
telling
of
her
pocket
mom
for
not
that.
to be out on social media like that. She didn't tell her how to behave at the tea. I don't think anyone even know that she was bringing her mom to the tea or that Mel was going to have a tea. But as
Hmm.
far as social media and calling Mel out on social media, she did ask her mom to stop doing that in social media because it makes it seem like it's coming from her. But what
Right.
I'm saying is you had just had this conversation about having and putting stuff out on the table. Why did it take your mom to do that? You could have very simply had that conversation with Mel
Mm,
as
for
well.
sure. For sure. And like you said, no matter what, there's still, these are people your daughter can do business with. So why would you want to do that in
Yeah.
this environment, at this setting, I should say, which I thought was totally uncalled for. And I don't think Stormy needs anyone to defend her, especially her mama, for sure.
So speak up. You spoke up with Keke. You speaking up with everybody else. Did speak up with Mel. But for some
Yeah.
reason, when it comes to Mel, I see Stormy sort of hold back just a little bit. She don't come as hard and as raw and as real with Mel as she do the other ladies in the group. And like I said, I'm glad they had this etiquette class. I hope that it leads to more of saying, hey, I need to learn how to communicate better. That's what I'm
I
praying it leads to.
oh, and I think that's the issue with most of us here on earth. It's
Mhm.
always a communication issue, right? It's whether the way you're conveying it, that it's not well received, or you're receiving it but you don't like how it sounds to your ear. Because I,
Mhm.
I I recognize that we were definitely having a communication issue, right? That no matter what I said, he just seemed to be annoyed with me.
Mhm.
And you know me, I don't like conflict so much that even today he called me and he was still annoyed that I said, "Oh, I probably shouldn't be saying this. I used my second phone and called my phone that I was on with him and told him I had another call, because I don't deal with that. It's either you're gonna convey and discuss, but
Mhm.
don't just as a grown person just shut me down. I told you I don't want to talk about it and that's it. And just like
He's so annoyed for? What was the
I I I I recognize there's also something deeper, but instead of saying whatever that really is, I just find that there's a lot of combatedness, if that's even a word, since Saturday. And I'm not like that. Especially this point in my life, I need to discuss it. I can't just,
But
I
what
can't
was said
just,
Saturday that he still combated on Monday?
Saturday was something he was saying something. I'm like, but that doesn't make any sense. And he said, well, that's what it is. And I don't want to talk about it. Something like that. I'm like, and of course I'm like, huh? I'm like, okay. Oh, we spoke in the wee hours. I was still up doing homework on Saturday. And he said, when I get back, I'm going to go look at a couple of jobs. He's an electrician, by the way. And he said, when I get back, and we have a 6 hour time difference. He said, when I get back, I'll let you know. Like, okay. So now it's like 10, 11 o'clock Saturday night. So this is like 3, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning for him. And I sent him a message saying, oh, this is becoming a habit because we've been off all week. Probably 30 minutes later, I got a phone call. I don't like when you say things like that because you're saying that I'm out here cheating. Like, whoa, how did we get here? Right? I was like, that's not what I said.
Mm-hmm.
And why would it should have that to me at this great big old age that we both are, it should have just been, nah, baby, I was out doing this work and I came in, sleep got the best of me. How did we get here? And he says that he believes that I think he's cheating. How are we here? It wasn't even a thought for me. And I just realized as we kept talking, it just kept going like downhill. I'm like, and eventually I said, oh, well, I'm tired now, so I'm going to bed just to get off the phone because I recognized the path that we were going and it was totally unnecessary.
Yeah.
Yesterday, of course, he called me. It's business as usual as long as I don't say anything to tick him off. And that's just not me. I'm not
Yeah.
in that space where I just accommodate people
Or you
anymore.
have to walk on eggshells.
Right.
Absolutely.
And watch what I say. And it was bedtime. So I went to bed and that's it. Today, he called me when he got home and it was the same thing. What did I say? Yeah, whatever it was just I still felt the antagonistic tone coming from him, and I like he was telling me something about, oh, his cousin's mom died, and
Mm-hmm.
he had told me about her yesterday, and I said, oh, I said, how old was she? He said 70 something, and his mom is 70 something, and he said, she raised she raised my mom. I'm like, that doesn't make sense. And so right away, he was just on me like, he just pounced. Like, yes, it makes perfectly sense, perfectly good sense. What do you mean? Why are you always doing like, oh Lord.
Yeah, it's something
I can,
deeper. And I pray that
sure,
y'all are able to have a conversation about it because it's something a lot deeper. That's just surface level. It's something that's
for
deeper than that.
sure. That I
Yeah.
can say, well, this doesn't make sense, and then you're just attacking me. I'm
Yeah.
like, I can't. And
Yeah.
you know me, it don't take much for me to run. I'm like, this is stupidity right here at its
Yeah.
finest. But I do believe he's worth. But I don't want to be in a relationship where I'm watching what I say, and no,
Yeah.
no matter what I say, it's not coming from a place of being mean. Just like,
Yeah.
no, no, yeah, yeah, well, my mom's history. She used to live at her house with her family. Okay. But how can 270 something and 170 something used to raise someone else that's in the same age group? What I mean,
You're not gonna get me on Kevin Bed's side. So he said she raised her, then she raised her, and I'm finna leave it alone. You're not
anyway,
gonna drag me down the rabbit hole with you.
it's crazy, but and we talked about this because we've talked about so much here on caffeine and conversation and talking about molestation and children and girls, especially girls needing to be in this safe space. And
Yeah.
we're talking about this exact same thing. That is communication with my mom. And my mom is a poor communicator. And I tell her that all the time. I'm like, I'm shocked that she had 5 children because
Tell your mom
she.
she need to be on Love Marriage in Huntsville. She'll blend right in.
And anyway, we were talking about that yesterday, and I'm really big on allowing children, especially girls, from the household, you encourage them to speak up. Of course, you then have to rein that in from it going from being disrespectful to being respectful, for sure. And that is that's parenting. And I was
Mhm.
saying to her, it wasn't until I was in my 50s that I felt comfortable and confident enough to be vocal about whatever it is that's on my mind.
Yeah,
And I said it took me to my 40s before I even talked about molestation and what I experienced from another family member.
yeah,
And I looked at FaceTime and I could see my mom's face. I'm like, so I'm very, and it was so sad, especially being Mother's Day, because my mom isn't very good at being, and I know I tell you this all the time, she's not very good at being vulnerable. And then, we're adding the other layer of being female, another layer of being a Black woman, because you're not supposed to feel, you're not supposed, you're just supposed to be robotic and just get through life. And I don't want that for me as I move forward in my life. I don't want to be robotic. I want to be vulnerable, and I want to be able to say whatever it is that's on my mind. I don't want
yeah.
to feel like I'm in a relationship with someone and I'm having to censor myself. I mean, I'm
Mhm.
not completely null and void of I have to consider someone else's feelings and consider them as a person, but I'm talking about that doesn't sound right. And it's like, I'm like, but he's gonna hear my mouth for sure. But I also know that I know something else deeper is going on. But
And
anyway,
speaking of vulnerability, Martell, I saw in the show that he had a conversation with Maurice, and he seems to, when the show, for the last 5 seasons, his ego got the best of him. But this season, and really at the end of last season, you can start seeing him be more vulnerable. Um, and really just saying, hey, I messed up, I screwed up, and I'm trying to get healing, I'm trying to go to counseling and move forward. This was Mother's Day weekend, and I had the pleasure, my husband made sure that I got to Atlanta, and I also got to Huntsville to see my grandchildren and my boys, and Jalen came down and surprised me, and we were at a restaurant eating for Mother's Day.
mhm.
And Martell and his mom was in there. I think I sent you the picture of Martell, and so they were so cool and down to earth. They came to the table and talked. Cause you know me, I can be loud and yellow. I'm like, Martell, what's up? Come here. And so he stood there for a second, and my son turned around. He's like, "Oh no, you not finna stand there. You finna come over here and you finna take a picture of my mom, because this is like the #1 fan of your show. Her and her friend, they got a podcast about the show." And so he said, "Oh really?" And he came over and he hugged me and he spoke very nice, very pleasant. And his mom, I can't say the cameras don't do her no justice, because Mama Hope was on point yesterday in her leopard dress. She absolutely looked stunning and she looked beautiful. And I didn't say that to her, but in my mind, I'm like, sis, the cameras don't do you no justice, because in person, she's a very beautiful woman. But anyway, just talking to him, and I said something to him, just about him, the mistakes he has made. And he looked at me, and you can see the sincerity in him. And he was like, sis, thank you. I needed to hear that. I appreciate that. And he said, you know what? The rest of the day, I'm going to think on that. And I was basically sharing with him my book, but I didn't even tell him I had a book. But, I was letting him know we all have a past. We all have mistakes, but don't let that be the end for you. Prove everybody wrong. They think you're this, they think you're this. And of course, you have made some horrible mistakes. It's no denying that. Keep being honest about it, keep being open, and then even share with young men coming behind you who may be married, having a family, about the mistakes, because it's not enough to make mistakes. What can we do to help somebody else from going? First of all, what can we do to learn from our own mistakes to better our own lives? And then what can you do to better somebody else? And I was telling him, you can be that good husband that people think that you possibly can be, that you are not your past, that you are a good father. Keep showing up for those babies regardless. And your kids, see, they old enough to see dad doing whatever. And
Mhm.
I said a few other things because I was like in the zone. I almost went in like preach mode. and you can tell he was receiving what I said. And he said, thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate that. He said, because I get beat down so much over my past. And I said, you're going to continue to get beat down, but you have to rise above. There's something in you, the greater in you has to rise above all of the chit chat and say, regardless of what people say, this is the type of husband I want to be if I be a husband again. This is the type of father, and this is just the type of human I want to be. And he
Yeah.
said, you know what? He said, I needed to hear that. And even in him saying, hey, I needed to hear that because being a TV personality, you just running into a fan and what you call, he didn't have to be, transparent with me. He could have been like, oh, I don't, you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
For
He was
sure.
like, hey, I appreciate that. Thank you. I needed to hear that. And you know what? The rest of the day, I'm gonna think you just made my day. I appreciate that. And so it was a good Mother's Day, and I was glad to run into him and have the opportunity to let him know you are not your past. That's one of the mantras in my book. No matter how you start, don't mean you have to finish, and no matter what mistakes you made, that was just
I agree.
what it
The
is.
only
Yeah,
thing I would say is I hope you realize he doesn't have to prove anything to anyone other than to
absolutely.
himself and his babies. Because if you
Bingo.
put all of that pressure on you, you'll never make it, you know?
Yeah,
So just
yeah,
keep being a decent human, like you said, and hopefully he'll get there in the end, because I'm sure he's gonna make mistakes again, but you just get up and move forward, you
yeah,
know? You gotta learn from it.
yeah. And then to see our girl Kimmy, Kimmy
Which
just gonna
one?
take like
'Cause I got some notes here.
what you got in your notes. I was just gonna say how Kimmy shut down Keke, and she was like, "Oh, that was
And
most
she
definitely."
needed to.
And I'm glad somebody called her to the carpet because, like you said, she was trying to backpedal. And don't try to hurt people because you're hurt.
Yeah.
And the lady said it good, the best when she was said, just tell the person how it made you feel. You don't have to try to, she didn't use the word throw jabs, but that's what she meant. Just tell them how you feel. You don't have to try to be hurtful. And I hope that the Cafinators can understand that when somebody hurts you, you don't have to throw stone for stone. Just let them know how you feel and keep moving
Mm-hmm.
forward. When a person show you who they are, believe them. But you don't have to be ugly. You don't have to stoop to their level. And that was one of the things Tiffany said. She said, I allowed Keke to bring me to her level. you
Right.
know. But
Sure.
what was in your notes, Kay?
I made mention of of Kimmy. I said Kimmy ain't with it this season. She gonna call everybody out like, no ma'am. So I appreciated that. And I did have when the show opened, Melody and Tiffany were the first on the screen, and
Mm-hmm.
and Melody playing that voicemail for of Martell for Tiffany. And I
Mm-hmm.
thought that just seems like some narcissistic behavior, that
Mm-hmm.
he would rant and rave, knowing that all he's doing is giving Melody receipts to go,
Mm-hmm.
go return. Like, I hope something that you said to him resonated, and just stop that. I mean, just go to court. You realize if what we're seeing and Melody is an unreasonable person, okay, let's go to court.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
But they
And I
also
think
get
when the
paid.
daughter called him back and said, Dad, you can get me now, he was hurt and he was in his feelings.
I
Um,
know, but
Yeah,
how
he was like,
awful
just
is
forget.
that
I'm not even
though?
going to deal with this no more today because he was very, because I think he really is trying to be a better person, and I think he's trying to, make amends and for them to get along for his kids, and she's not bending, and it's sad.
I don't know if it's not that she's not bending, because she made points to that. I don't think it's that
She
she's not bending. I think it's they're both playing tennis, and they just keep hitting the
yeah.
ball back and forth to hurt each other, not recognizing in the end it's the children that
He's
you're
really trying
hurting.
to hurt her though, and I think that's what's bothering him, that he's not trying to throw blows and hurt her anymore. He realized I've messed up, I've hurt her. I'm trying to give her space. I'm trying to respect her. I just want us to get along for the kids, and it's not working for him. But one of the things that uh I forgot Chris's wife name, Miss Nail. She keeps saying y'all, and I think Maurice said it in the show. Maurice said, "Look, brother, I'm praying for you because y'all got to get along for the kids." Marceau has said it. Miss Nail has said it. Y'all have to find a common ground because at the end of the day, and I think that's the thing that hurts me watching the show is no matter what happens between two adults, it's the kids that's going to be hurt at the
Yeah,
end.
they
But
can't
you see
even
how
fake it,
nasty
the
Stormy
children.
mom was with Miss Nail. She was like, "You're not even part of this conversation." And then Stormy and Miss Nell wasn't even trying to say she was part of the whatever went on.
Yeah.
All she was saying is, as an outsider, not knowing what's going on, feel tension in the room, and they just pounced on her.
But the mother, Stormy's mom, she was hot before they even got to the tea. She was
Yeah,
hot from them sitting in the house in the living room talking, which I don't see. You have to at some point. She must have recognized that this is the reason why your daughter is on the show, to try and boost some, revenue for the business that you're benefiting from. Why would you even interject yourself into your your daughter's relationships with other women?
yeah,
It's just mind blowing.
yeah.
But did Wanda get her own show? Because she hasn't been on yet this season.
No, they just voted her off of there after she started talking about the kids. They thought that was a low blow, and so they voted her off of there. But I don't have anything else to say.
I only
We'll
think
have another a meeting. I
I
have to.
only think of Love, Marriage in Huntsville um when it's Saturday, and I gotta watch it for our podcast.
Yeah,
So other than that, I'm just too busy,
yeah.
you know.
So if we don't have any more points, and I know I have another meeting that I have to jump out on.
Yeah. And I got
Um,
a rubric I gotta build for an assignment that I got.
it's okay,
So
Panators. It's been fun. I pray y'all
it's
leave
been
y'all
great.
comments below.
Leave us your comments and questions and whatever it is that you'd like to hear us talk about. Let us know. We're open. We're open to growing our channel. And don't forget to tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend.
Yeah, and subscribe, and share. Yeah,
Please.
yeah.
And again, you're listening to Caffeine and Conversation, and we'll talk to you all next week.